afternoon, so you may hear this meeting's being recorded.
This meeting is being recorded.
Perfect timing. Thank you so much, Kathy, for keeping us on track. And thank you, everybody who has joined us today. We are really excited to have our final of the season Food for Thought Plus. And we thought it was timely to talk a little bit about nutrition. I know that I'm out in the garden with my son and daughter every day, as many people are also probably tending to their gardens as well. So we just thought that it was a timely topic, and always love spending more time with Alissa and Eric, who, if you don't know, make up lead our nutrition staff here at the Greater Cleveland Food Bank. They also have some others on their team, as well as contracted out. Quick background is for those that are here at the food bank, this is a hybrid model. So if you're here at the food bank, if you just want to write on your piece of paper, if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to make, and then Carrie and Kathy are in the room and they'll be able to walk by and grab those for you. And then for others that are joining us via Zoom, please feel free to just put those comments and questions right in the chat, and we will save those for later on. But if you think of a question, just feel free to put it right in there, and we will do our best to make sure that we get to it. So far, I think we have a 10 out of 10, 100% batting average of being able to get to all of the questions. So we'll try to keep that streak alive. Also, just to give a little background of Alissa and Eric, Alissa is a doctoral candidate at Cleveland State University and is also an adjunct professor. She also has past experience as a private nutritionist as well as a health coach. And a lot of her work really focuses on food as medicine, which I'm sure she's going to tell us a little bit more about in just a moment. And then we also have Eric with us, who is a Kent State grad, and his main focus and background is in dietetics and nutrition education, menu creation, and really just focuses on nutrition education and our community kitchen. Alissa and Eric, anything else that you guys want to add just in terms of background?
Oh, I think that was a really nice introduction. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, you guys are our second panelist for this Food for Thought session. So we will just have just a very kind of open conversation, and just looking forward to diving a little bit more into all of the really good work that you guys do. I know that when me and my team spend a lot of time just talking to different partners of the food bank, whether it's volunteers or donors or constituents, a lot of folks don't even realize that we have a kitchen on site or that we have nutritionists on site and on staff. Alissa, would you want to maybe just give a general overview about you and your team and everything that you guys do here at the food bank?
Sure. So let's see. I can say that I actually started working with the food bank about 10 years ago. I did some nutrition education and agency nutrition training back then. And then I started in my current capacity about 5 years ago. And what was going on at that time is that there's growing awareness among the community, and especially among healthcare providers, that food insecurity and what you eat affects one's health outcomes. So the food insecure population is much more likely to develop chronic diseases. And once they develop a chronic disease, it makes that disease much harder to manage. So with that growing awareness comes more and more interest in partnering. So a lot of what I do is develop and manage programs and partnerships with healthcare providers. We actually have increasing interest from managed care as well as insurance companies. And then we also, along with providing food, do a tremendous amount of nutrition education in the community, because it's one thing to give people food, it's another to help people understand how to eat it in a way that's delicious and that really makes them want to continue a healthier lifestyle. So that's kind of the broad picture of what we do. And Eric, do you want to add anything as far as your role?
I work with Alissa on managing the Food as Medicine partnerships. And also, as Kristen mentioned, doing nutrition education classes, cooking demos, not just sometimes to Food as Medicine partners, but to all our partners.
Very good. Well, thanks for the quick overview. Alissa, do you mind just diving a little bit deeper? I feel like food is medicine is a phrase that people may have heard, whether through the food bank or just generally is a phrase that tends to be shared. But for our particular work, food is medicine means something really important. Would you mind just diving a little bit deeper into that program that we have?
Yeah, people absolutely use that term very differently. So you'll hear food as medicine, you'll hear food is medicine, and depending on who's using that terminology, it can be very different things. So from the perspective of the food bank, it really refers to the whole kind of landscape of partnerships that we have that are oriented towards improving health outcomes among the population that we serve. So we have a few different buckets. So I can walk through what those buckets are. The first one would be this concept of food prescriptions. So we have several healthcare provider partners who are screening patients for food insecurity and then providing a food prescription to a particular location, a very nutritious pantry that's on site most of the time at the healthcare provider. And the intention is to improve the health outcome of those patients. So they're screened for food insecurity. They may or may not have a chronic condition, but the intention of providing that food prescription is to improve the health outcome. So it might be reducing their diabetic numbers. It might be improving hypertension or blood pressure. It might be preventing further emergency room visits. It can be fairly broad, but the biggest area of interest is really in hypertension and diabetic control. So that's the first bucket, is these food prescriptions. And we have partnerships with Metro Health and university hospitals specifically in that work. A second bucket is really to increase access to fruits and vegetables among a food insecure patient population. So to do that work, we offer produce distributions or mobile pantries at a lot of different healthcare provider partners. So that is similar to what we do with many other partners, just more dedicated towards providers. So for example, we have dialysis provider partners who are interested in increasing the produce consumption of their patients. And this is really important because kidney disease is more common among a food insecure population. We also provide these produce distributions to a lot of federally qualified health centers in the region, as well as several of our hospital partners. So that is the second bucket. The third bucket, which has increased a lot over the last few years, is that healthcare providers are screening quite widely now for food insecurity. That involves a 2-question screener. So they're working this into their workflow to screen a lot of patients on a regular basis on their food needs. So if you know that your patient is food insecure, what then do you do about it? You may offer food on site, but more likely you don't, because that requires a lot of work on the part of the provider. So as an alternative to providing food on site, or ideally in addition to, even if you do, we're accepting a lot of referrals of food insecure patients. So that third bucket is really referral work. So we know that the healthcare providers in our region are screening over 100,000 patients every year, well over actually, for food insecurity. So we expect, to get thousands of referrals of food insecure patients into the food bank. So we've developed new processes to accept those referrals and refer those patients out to food resources in their community, as well as connect them with public benefits such as SNAP. So that is the third bucket. The fourth bucket is that we have very exciting work that's really an additional type of intervention that we're managing more from the food bank perspective versus a provider perspective. So we have a new program that we're going to launch called Nourishing Beginnings, in the process of launching right now, to provide nutritious food to women at high risk of poor birth outcomes. We live in a community that has very inequitable rates of infant mortality, in particular among the Black population. So your risk of having an infant die within the first year is about 7 times higher if you live in Cleveland, if you're Black, than if you're white. So this has been going on for decades. It's absolutely abysmal. And there are a lot of initiatives to try to improve that health outcome. But this is the first nutrition intervention for that population that we're running. So it's very exciting. We're doing it in partnership with Case Western Reserve University and also our local hub, Better Health Partnership. So a very exciting partnership, again, aimed very specifically at improving health outcomes.
Alissa, I have so many questions that I would love to just go a little bit deeper on, if you don't mind. And this is also just a good reminder, if anyone has any questions as they hear things that Eric and Alissa share, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we would love to dive a little bit deeper. One of them is, can you talk a little bit about the partnership in particular with Metro? And, you know, I know that we frequently see them at the Euclid Pantry with their truck. But can you go a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah, so Metro Health is such a wonderful partner for us. Really, they have exceptional staff. They're very mission oriented in a similar way that the food bank is. And they have made very dedicated, specific efforts to address what's called social determinants of health. So this, if anyone isn't familiar, the concept of social determinants of health is really that it's not just your access and your quality of healthcare that determines your health outcome, but it's the environment in which you live. So it's where you live, it's your access to jobs, it's your education, you know, it's the food that you eat, it's all of those things. It's really your environment. So there's been really good research over the past couple of decades. And so what you'll hear frequently, if you're in this space, is that 80 to 90% of your health is dictated by your social determinants of health, not your quality of care. So that's something that's become like really a lot more front and center for healthcare providers over the last, like I said, couple decades, but really quite a lot over the last 5 years. And Metro Health is really a pioneer in addressing this space for their patients. So they started a whole new organization dedicated to social determinants of health. So that's called Institute for Hope. If you look up Institute for Hope, that's their operational unit dedicated to the social determinants of their patients. So we work very closely with the leadership in this particular unit of Metro. So with Metro, we help to manage a food prescription process, which is what they call their food as medicine work. It's this food prescription they send folks who are diabetic, who have hypertension, who have recent exacerbation of heart failure, and we help to provide the food and some data support for that program. We also do multiple produce distributions. We've offered shelf-stable products throughout the pandemic to reach different patient populations. As Kristen mentioned, the Metro mobile unit, that's something that they're developing, is really getting to reach people where they are, a concept that we're very familiar with here in the food bank world. So they send their mobile unit out to the Euclid Pantry once a week. What am I forgetting? Eric, do you want to talk about nutrition education too for Metro? They will frequently participate in nutrition education as well.
We're actually, working with Metro's going to be doing some kind of programming with children over the summer. So we're planning produce distributions in conjunction with that, and we're talking about child nutrition classes as part of that. Maybe it's like a summer camp, but that's in the works. We've also in the past done lunch and learns at, and this is going back to pre-COVID times, at their food is medicine clinic on main campus. So we've gathered there with one of our community nutrition educators and done educational sessions on, again, whether it's hypertension, diabetes. We pick a health condition with nutrition implications that's unfortunately too common. And then so we can sit there and our educator will bring in either samples or something that they can prepare with that group that is a good example of something to eat with that condition. And then that kind of sets the table for the discussion around nutrition related to that condition.
Yeah, one more thing we have going on that I can mention too, and this is what's so enjoyable about working with Metro Health, is that we talk to them regularly, and there's just an ongoing conversation about what more we can do together. So one of the new things that we're working on is developing a text campaign that will be in partnership with Metro and our help center staff. So we're looking at prioritizing certain Metro Health patients and then engaging in a text campaign to see who might be eligible for SNAP that's not receiving it. So we'll be able to target through Metro Health patient population and then offer support to those patients to increase SNAP enrollment.
That's great. And so much of it is you don't know what resources are out there. You don't know what you don't know. And so just the marketing and the education behind what is available for folks, especially given the fact that there's so many overlapping clients that we're serving, is huge. And the fact that they're screening hundreds of, over 100,000 folks, and we're getting thousands of referrals, just makes me think back to our conversation for Food for Thought Plus not too long ago with Tiffany Scruggs, who was over at the Euclid Pantry and was highlighting a lot of the work that her team was doing as well. It's just so interrelated. And it's also just critical to have those strong partnerships, and the fact that they're very open. And again, we all have the same cause that we're working towards. So that's great to hear.
Yeah, it's a really wonderful partnership. So thanks for asking about it.
Of course, of course. Well, and Eric, we started to talk a little bit about the education that takes place. Would you want to dive maybe a little bit deeper in terms of just all the education that you do and that you oversee with your team?
Sure. Much of our nutrition outreach focuses on either seniors or children, but we also have efforts that apply to the general population. So it's open to all of our partners, and sometimes we also provide for non-partners, organizations that don't have a formal partnership with the food bank, but they're an important part of the community. So to give examples, for instance, right now we have 4 community nutrition educators that work with us and will go out to our different sites. So with child nutrition, for instance, during the school year and even during summer, there's different programs. Often the sites end up being either schools or libraries that are distributing meals with us, and they'll reach out to us about programming. So we have a lot of curriculum that's already developed. We have, with kids, it may be as simple as starting with teaching about the food groups, introducing them to new foods, and that could also be in the form of like kitchen classes. So getting kids involved in preparing a simple recipe, and kind of opens them up when they get involved in it to be more open to trying new foods.
I feel like I went to one where it was about with kids was about leafy greens maybe, and seniors and heart health. And it's really impressive, the curriculum that you've put together in a way that, speaks both to kids particularly, and in their language and ways that they're going to understand, and then also with seniors as well. I've had the good fortune of attending a couple of them, and they're enjoyable. They're fun too.
Nice. We try.
Gotta be fun.
Yeah, you got to engage people. You want them to, learn and take away from it. On the senior realm, like you said, we've done heart healthy classes, diabetes nutrition. We've also developed new classes based on circumstances. For example, when COVID hit, that shut everything down for a while, and nobody wanted nutrition educators to come and share food and meet with small groups. So we developed, like everybody, we got on Zoom and started doing virtual classes. But we also developed, like I said, curriculum. In that situation, a lot of people were concerned about, how can you eat to improve your immune system health? So I'm a registered dietitian, worked, reading up on, what foods, what nutrients can help support our immune function and we put something together and we started offering that to our partners.
So just out of curiosity, not to put you on the spot, but what are some of the immune boosting foods that we would recommend?
Usually we go with Cheetos. No, I
My
mean,
kids-
probably shouldn't be surprising. Dark leafy greens. I mean, really, if you want to call them a superfood, that's good. But whatever you want to call them, it's important. You know, even myself, I know I'm not eating as much as the ideal recommendations are. So I'm always trying to find ways to work it in and convince others, you know, how can you work them in an easy way, you know? So whether it's making salads in the summer, it doesn't have to have a million ingredients, you know, but even if it's just simple, you know, greens, maybe a couple extra toppings and a, you know, a dressing, a vinaigrette or what have you.
Yeah, vitamin C, you know, well, you have to eat something fresh to get your vitamin C. A little goes a long way because vitamin C gets killed when you cook it. So you've got to have your, you know, your citrus during the winter season when it's in season, and you know, you can make smoothies for stuff so you're still getting the vitamin C. Also, things like omega-3s, vitamin D. One of my favorite foods to recommend that people are surprised about is sardines. It's one of the best, one of the healthiest things you can eat. So people are like, ew, gross. But if you like tuna, you're going to like sardines, and there are great sardines out there. So a hidden superfood that's shelf stable, accessible. That's something that came up on a wish list from our Food as Medicine partners, the dietitians who work at the Food as Medicine clinics, which are our pantries that receive those prescriptions. And we were able to find it. So we offer sardines now through our shopping list.
Wow. Good. That's awesome. And I will admit I've never once tried a sardine, Alissa, but now I am going to try one very soon so that I can say that I could try and hopefully start incorporating it into my diet.
How old are your kids?
Sam is 3 and Max is 1.
It's a good time. It's a good time to give it to them. It's very easy. You can just like mash it up for the young ones, or believe it or not, my kids love sardines. And like I said, it's a really, really good source of vitamin D, really good source of calcium, really good source of omega-3. So 3 really important things that you want to get into your kids.
Good.
Let me know
Good
how
to
it
know.
goes. Yeah.
I will definitely let you know. The harder one is going to be my 34-year-old kid, big kid that I have at home, to get him to eat the sardines, but we'll see how that goes. Sam and Max will do much better than their dad does.
My recommendation is to make it kind of like a tuna melt. So to make a little bit of like a salad out of it, a little bit of mayonnaise, a little lemon juice, a little mustard, and, you know, maybe some parsley if you have some, make it into a salad, and then good bread and cheese on top, and you'll never know. Like a tuna melt.
All right. I'll report back. For Food for Thought Plus, everyone can hold me to it and ask me in September how it went. So sorry, Eric, to go a little bit off of the segue. So in terms of numbers, how many of these nutrition educations are we doing or hoping to do, or what does that look like?
I think our budget for the fiscal year of classes is, I think, around 380 currently. We're tracking under that, and part of that challenge is, for instance, like in January, there was another bad COVID outbreak, and people cancel classes.
Yeah.
But another one of our priorities is not just the number of classes, but how many of our partners are actually benefiting and utilizing these nutrition classes. So typically it's been a low number relative to the total number, and a lot of repeat classes at the same sites. You know, once an organization tries it, they usually love it and want to schedule like monthly, if not weekly.
Oh, great.
So this year, again, we've really been trying to expand the number of partnerships. So I think we went from like 30 last year. I think we're about 35, and by the end of the fiscal year, we're probably going to have about 40 different partners. So it's still small numbers, but now that we're focused on it, I think we can, you know, we're growing it.
Absolutely. And like you said, once they are able to bring on and do it once, it sounds like you have a lot of repeat customers that all of a sudden really enjoy it.
Yeah, it sells itself for the most part.
Well, and what sold those kids when I was there was, I think the day that I was there, they were getting smoothies for the cooking demonstration.
Samples. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the recipes and taste tests and things like that too?
Yeah. Before I came to the food bank, I worked with a major food service contractor in managing a recipe database. So they really exposed me not just to being a nutritionist, but giving me a lot of experience working with chefs in developing and adapting recipes. And also, as somebody who cooks at home, I've got into that a lot, trying to find how do you make healthy, simple, affordable, quick, and of course, it's got to be tasty. So, taking all that as we come here, a lot of the times, whatever the class we're doing, I mean, people love to try something. So we can work a recipe into the class in one way, shape, or form. That's ideal. And again, depending on if it's a produce distribution site, we're going to look at what produce are they getting, which it really comes down to, we don't know until the day before. But we'll look at that list, and we have a recipe database which we've developed, and we keep adding to it. So we'll see. Okay, well they're getting zucchini. Maybe let's do. We have a chocolate chip zucchini pancake recipe. Is that appropriate for that site? Will we have an opportunity to cook, or does it need to be something cold? If not, we'll adapt to whatever the circumstances. But we've refined recipes over time, try to minimize the number of ingredients, minimize the amount of time. I often think when it comes to getting those ingredients, we try to feature things that we're giving away for free, whether it's produce or shelf-stable ingredients. But if it's something new, is it an impactful ingredient? For instance, ground flaxseed. It's very nutritious. I don't see us giving it away for free typically, but you can find it at Aldi. So that's one of my gauges, like how common is it in groceries across our region? So if Aldi has it, I'm like, it's pretty common that people can at least find it.
Thanks so much. We talked a lot about nutrition education, and to kind of flip that a little bit, Alissa, would you want to talk about some of the research projects that you're involved with, or and the food bank's involved with?
Sure. So the biggest research project, or I guess most substantial project that we're involved in right now is what I mentioned earlier, which is this Nourishing Beginnings program. So we've been designing this program for about a year, a little over a year actually. And this program grew out of a pandemic effort. So there is a community collaboration organization called First Year Cleveland, and the sole reason for existence of this organization is to get people together to create solutions to the infant mortality issue in our region. So early in the pandemic, like late spring, early summer 2020, we heard from First Year Cleveland that there was growing concern about getting healthy food to women at high risk of poor birth outcomes and infant mortality problems. So we were able to very quickly get food to, I want to say, over 1,000 households of expecting individuals. That food service that we provided, again, very quickly in the course of the pandemic, got really positive feedback from both the people who received the food, but also many of the community health workers who are working with these women. So after this, we kind of got together with a couple of organizations and started talking about making this more of a regular program, and then also to study it, to see what the outcomes really are. Because if we don't put really kind of focused and good plans together on how to study the outcomes, we just won't know. So we've been working with Case Western Reserve University and also Better Health Partnership, which is an organization that is able to fund or receive funding for community health workers. So the idea is that we're pairing nutritious food that will be home delivered and customized, so sized for the household, customized to the individual's preferences, and home delivered to make it convenient every other week with the social support that they're getting already through a community health worker. And that's a really important consideration, because if anyone's ever tried to change their diet, it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. And so nobody really wants to be told what to do, right? Like, eat this way, not that way. Nobody really wants to hear that. But if you're getting really supportive, enthusiastic, compassionate advice, and suggestions from someone who you trust, you're more likely to make some changes. So it's this coupling together of the food with the social support that we think is very exciting. And also the fact that we think it's a potentially sustainable solution, because this, under this model, the work of the community health worker is reimbursable through Medicaid. And so if we're able to demonstrate that there's a real health improvement of this food, it could become reimbursable through Medicaid also. But we have to have really good numbers, which is why we have a very rigorous research protocol. So in a nutshell, with this research, we'll be doing surveys to assess things like stress, changes in stress, food insecurity, changes there, depression and anxiety, as well as those objective metrics that we'll be able to get from managed care organizations, things like birth weight and how premature a baby is and things like that. So it's, like I said, we're launching it this week, and it will run for about 2 years.
Oh, wow. And are there any other just facts or statistics? I mean, it's pretty obvious why this is so important, but hearing some of the startling facts that you had shared earlier in the conversation, in terms of, a Black woman that's pregnant is 7 times more likely, or the child, in terms of the first year of life in SIDS. What other facts or research is out there? It's just so devastating to hear.
Oh, I mean, there's so much. You can go onto First Year Cleveland's website if you really want to read, like, the facts specifically around infant mortality. And the 7 times figure, that's Cleveland. If you go out to Cuyahoga County, it's more like 4 times worse. I mean, Ohio it's actually very similar to the statistics for food insecurity. Ohio is worse than the nation on average. Cuyahoga County is worse than the state. Cleveland is worse than the county. So your birth outcomes mimic that. So it gets worse as you get concentrated into the core of the city. And one of the big correlations, interestingly, is how segregated one is. So the neighborhoods in Cleveland that have the worst birth outcomes are the most highly segregated. And we define segregation by the percentage of the population that's there. So there are neighborhoods in the city that are segregated at like 96 to 98% African American versus white. And the more segregated you are, the more susceptible you are to some of the factors of systemic racism. And that, as we know, creates a lot of stress as well as access issues. I mean, it's a whole host of things. But if you want to think about root causes, you have to go back to issues like redlining, which redlining is getting more, there's more awareness about it now than there used to be. But if you overlay redlining maps with health outcome maps, it's like a perfect fit. So the physical areas that were divested or deinvested have the worst health outcomes. Another example, in addition to infant mortality, is you have just life expectancy numbers. So every once in a while in the news, you see there's about a 30-year difference in life expectancy if you're out in, like Pepper Pike versus in a neighborhood in Cleveland. So it's just another example of really the same reality, which is that where you live matters as far as your health and your health outcome.
Thanks for sharing. It's unfortunate to hear, but I think it's important, all of the work that you guys are doing to just help change those outcomes.
Yeah, and add one more thing to that, one of the things with health and with food is that historically in this country and just with all of us, we tend to put eating and how you eat and your health on the level of personal responsibility, right? So if you see someone who has poor health, there's a tendency to say, well, that was his or her decision. They made those choices. And it's not that simple. It really has so much to do with your environment. We're all products of our environment. So if you have bad choices to make, you're going to make bad choices. If you have good choices, it's a lot easier to make them, you know? So I would encourage people to think about these issues, not so much on a personal responsibility level, but on an environmental level and how that environment is dictating the choices that we have.
Well, and so much of it goes back to the food deserts that we have in those areas. Would you mind sharing just a little bit of food deserts, and for those who may not know, and what that looks like?
Sure. So the concept of a food desert, that's been studied for several decades, actually, and there have been a lot of initiatives locally and nationally to alleviate food deserts. So the idea is you're in a food desert if you're not within, I think it's half a mile in the county is how we define it, of a full service grocery store. And the reason we use full service grocery stores because that's where you can really access the full basket of foods, and it's also much more affordable. Bigger stores tend to have better prices than small corner stores. And a lot of that's just supply and demand and economies of scale. So if you live further away than that defined distance, and like I said, I'm pretty sure it's a half a mile, you're considered to live in a food desert. And so if you live in a food desert and you don't have transportation, it makes it very difficult to actually get the groceries that will keep you healthy, even if you have every other intention of doing that. There's another term that fewer people have heard of, and that's food swamp. So a food swamp is a neighborhood that has a very high concentration of poor quality food. So a number of fast food outlets, you know, those stores that sell nothing but ho-hos or things like that. So, you know, if you live in a food desert, it's very likely also a food swamp. And that's something to keep in mind also when you think about what the factors are that contribute to someone's eating habits and their overall health.
Yeah. I think it brings back just the point of why our produce distributions that we do are so critical, especially in these particular areas. I remember a story that Kristen Warzoka had often shared, and for those on the line, they may have heard it before, but was at a produce distribution, I believe at one of our hospital partners, and we bring a lot of food. I mean, we bring thousands of pounds of fresh produce to these. And a grandma had her grandson with her, and the grandma was going to the doctor's appointment, but wanted to get the food before she went to the doctor's appointment because she was very nervous that we were going to run out and we weren't going to be here. We had assured that we would be here, but it was really important to her that she got her food beforehand. And her grandson was with her and had said, you know, I'm really hungry now. Is there anything that I can eat now? And looked around, and we had fresh bags of apples. So asked him if he wanted an apple. Pretty easy food to eat on the go. And he had looked up and he had said, "What's an apple taste like?" He had never once had an apple. Which, I mean, I feel like that is one of the easiest, most accessible fruits. And from my perspective, from my very limited perspective, was just blown away by the fact that that young child, and Kristen said he's probably 8 or so years old because he was missing his front teeth, and that was right about the same age that her daughter was missing her front teeth too, so being 8 years old and never tasting an apple before. So you like bit it on the side of his mouth because again, he's missing his front teeth, and described as being, you know, crunchy and all of those things. And he loved it. And he actually ended up asking for another. But again, that just goes back to the access that you're talking about.
Yeah, and those are such sad stories, and we hear them so frequently, you know. I mean, and actually it goes beyond sad to me. It makes me angry. I hate to say, but it's unconscionable that we have children who've never had that type of produce, because it really matters. Like the food that you eat when you're young dictates your preferences for life. So it's so crucially important to get kids access to these foods as early as possible.
Sardines, noted.
Yeah.
It'll be in Sammy Max's diet ASAP.
And what you're doing with your kids and being out in the garden, that's really incredible. You know, I think that there are also a lot of gardening initiatives out there, because that changes the way that you think about food. You know, food is like how we perceive food is really important. What is it to you? You know, and our culture is so interesting in this country because you get to a certain age and there's all this stress around it. And almost this country has a lot of guilt associated with food, which is too bad because it really shouldn't be that way. It should be something that we're able to be appreciative of and enthusiastic about. And, you know, there's an element of wonder about food, which is what you cultivate in a garden. Like, look at this miracle, you know, it's incredible that we can grow food and eat it. So, you know, that's just a plug for nutrition education in a way, because when people think about nutrition education, they think about the food pyramid and here's what you do eat and here's what you don't eat. And that's not how we do it. It's more about generating enthusiasm for how incredible food can be in a positive way. And our nutrition educators and Eric are really great at that.
Oh, absolutely. I've seen them in action multiple times. I mean, it's amazing. And again, just how relevant they make it, whether they're talking to children or talking to seniors, they make it very relevant and also, again, fun. You don't even realize that you're learning. Well, I think that brings up a really good point, Alissa. Would you and Eric maybe want to share a little bit more in regards to the concept of SWAP?
Sure. So I'll start. SWAP is an acronym for Supporting Wellness at Pantries, and it's a nutrition rating system that was developed with food pantries in mind. It's a ranking system on a stoplight model. So foods can be ranked as green, yellow, or red. Green being choose frequently, yellow being choose in moderation, and red being choose infrequently. And the foods are scored on 3 factors. One is sodium content, one is added sugar, and one is saturated fat. So you have to reach a threshold for all 3 of those things to be green, or, you know, the other areas. So in the pantry, the idea is that the folks who are running the pantry are able to rank the items. The thresholds themselves are published, they're given to you. If you go to our Euclid pantry, they're hanging up. And then we organize and label the food. So it's meant to be just a little bit of a nudge, and a nudge is a subtle, it provides a subtle shift in behavior that's frequently subconscious. So we label the food, put it on the aisles in a specific fashion. And again, the idea is that as you're going through and selecting your foods, you're just nudged a little bit towards selecting the items that are green or yellow versus the red items. You want to add anything, Eric?
Sure. In my experience, going back before the food bank in for-profit food service, we talked about behavioral economics, which was I guess the fancy term for nudges. But those kind of strategies that companies use to sell things effectively to people can also be used to encourage people to make better choices. So it's, you know, SWAP is one of those elements. Like, people don't even need to really fully understand it to have a general, just kind of subconscious, you see green when it's a green, yellow, red, and well, green means go. We like green. We don't want to stop it. You know, it's just intuitive. And there's other things like, you know, where's the placement of the product? Are the healthy options at eye level so people can see them easily and reach them easily? Are the less healthy options maybe higher up or lower down, making it just a little more inconvenient to get those? What else? You know, the sampling. We do a lot of, you know, we talked about recipe sampling, you know, whether it's at a produce distribution. We also do that at the Euclid pantry. And again, that when people are trying a recipe, you know, it's sitting right in front of you. All you have to do is just take a taste. And if you like it, here's the recipe card. Many of the ingredients are on our shelves here today. You can pick them up. It eliminates the barriers, as Alissa was talking about, making it easier to make good choices.
Yeah, Eric, I remember you telling me about putting the vegetable pasta eye level and kind of testing that. Do you want to share that real quickly?
Yeah, when I was helping out one point with stocking at the Euclid pantry, They could always use help, so please volunteer. But yeah, I was working in the pasta department. They have a lot of donated products. So there's stuff that we buy where we have tons of the spaghetti. But then we have these random, there's a few gluten-free ones. I found a spinach spaghetti, which I had never even seen. There was maybe a couple boxes or something. It wasn't a lot, but I'm like, this is cool. Again, we talked about getting dark leafy greens into your diet more. So I'm like, I put that, I prominently, facing the box outward, right on the edge of the shelf, on the eye level, easy to see, easy to reach shelf. And then I was putting the other options, again, white pasta, trying to put that down. And just as I was sitting there working on this, somebody walked through and it was a split second. He just grabbed the spinach spaghetti and kept walking. I doubt he registered that it had spinach in it, but I hope when they get home and cook it, they're going to enjoy it. Whether or not they know that it's a healthier pasta, it's still going to benefit their body.
Yeah, and that's the whole idea with nudges, is that you're not thinking about it. And again, that goes back to the problems with our historical approach on nutrition education. People always assume that if you tell someone to do something differently and they know better, they're going to do better. And a lot of times it's just not how we make decisions, especially around food. It's much more subconscious. So every little thing that we can do to make the healthier items easier to take and more of a default option, that helps. And then every once in a while, someone will point out, well, that's a little paternalistic. You're affecting people's decisions without them knowing. And that's true. But as Eric mentioned, it's being done already. It's being done to all of us. The private industry does these things everywhere. So it's affecting our own decisions as we go through the grocery store, because people are paying for those key spots and paying for that marketing. Food marketing is billions and billions and billions of dollars in this country. So people are actively working to get us to choose unhealthy choices, because unhealthy choices are more profitable. So in a way, what we're just doing is trying to, dial it back a little bit, exert a little bit more influence over the healthy items.
Yeah. Well, you bring up, what's going on in the country, and something that makes me think of too is just the crisis formula for baby formula that we have going on. Can you talk, either of you, a little bit more about that and how the food bank's helping?
Go ahead, Eric.
I can't speak to, the food bank I know is trying to source formula. But again, as a nutrition education team, as this issue, evolved, we were like, well, let's try to focus on, if people can't get formula, well, breastfeeding is a natural alternative. How can we support that? We know it's nutritionally superior. So I worked with, we actually had a nutrition intern, and this is actually last week, but they helped develop a handout on how, nutrition wise, what can you do to support and improve, your ability to breastfeed. So from simple things like hydrating to making sure, again, that your diet is rich in healthy fats, a lot of vitamins and minerals, which you're going to get a good variety if you eat a variety of fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, things that, because these nutrients can be passed on. And also even talking about something that hopefully any parent can appreciate, flavors can be introduced through the breast milk. Mm-hmm. So if you're eating a good variety of foods, garlic, for instance, it's a flavor that can be passed on, introduced to your child, even potentially, I believe, before they're born. And I'm pointing this out because I hear many parents talk, and I know it too. I got some kids being picky eaters. And I was a very picky eater too. I'm glad I ended up changing my ways. But the more you can do to set your children up for success, introducing them to different flavors early on, there is evidence that it's going to make them more open to trying different things and appreciating or eating different things as they grow.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Eric. Oh, go on, Alissa.
I was just going to say, I'm not probably up on the latest of what's going on with infant formula just because I was gone the last week, but I do know that we have been trying to source some. I think we had a shipment, it may have gotten canceled, you know, just like everything else, we bid for these things and we try to get them. We don't always succeed. I do know that we just got a delivery of donation formula from the Cleveland Clinic, and that formula is going out to our Euclid pantry. So that's just an immediate resource that we have right now, is formula at the Euclid pantry. It's very interesting because the hospitals, for liability reasons, are not able to give out formula anymore. So every once in a while we'll get donations, and we'll always reach out and ask if our hospital partners can take it, and we can't. So if we do get donations, it goes out into our pantry network.
Thanks so much to both of you for sharing, both from just the education standpoint and trying to educate and help mothers be successful with breastfeeding, as well as just, you know, the challenges with sourcing this formula, but also being creative and, like you said, another great partner with another hospital, with Cleveland Clinic, and receiving that formula and immediately putting it on the shelves over at the Euclid pantry. Mm-hmm. We're just starting to wrap up, and I have a few questions we're going to get through. But if you have any other questions, by all means, please feel free to send them through the chat. One question that I do see goes a little bit back towards our community kitchen and menu design. Eric, would you mind sharing a little bit just about our community kitchen and what those menus kind of look like? I know you've touched on a little bit the differences between children's and seniors.
Yeah, I work with our kitchen team in writing both there's an agency menu for agencies to order, and there's several menus for child nutrition programs. Right now we're in summer feeding. So we have a breakfast and a lunch. They're both cold meals, and we put those meals together. And I use that term, like, we're putting meals together at this point. We're not doing a hot menu right now, but we've outgrown the kitchen we're in currently. So we're doing thousands of meals a day. I don't have the numbers, but it's considerably more than what it was designed to be able to produce. So we've had to do things. For those that have volunteered or come through, you may have seen, we have a production line outside of the kitchen, which is technically in the warehouse. So the only way we can get approval from the USDA to do something like that, all the foods that are being put together in a meal box out there need to be prepackaged, you know, fully sealed, so there's no chance of dust or debris getting into it. So, and again, with our limited space and limited labor too sometimes, and well, prices are going up if you haven't heard. So we're dealing with all these challenges too. And a lot of it's like, well, what can we do? What can we get that's going to meet the needs and the nutritional requirements, hopefully be appealing to the children that are going to eat these meals, and affordable within our budget. So we get what we can, and we're putting those together, and then we're shipping them out to hundreds of sites every day. And we're building a new kitchen, which we're hoping to move into, I think, in August. So it'll give us a lot more space to spread out. Hopefully that'll give us an opportunity, if we can get the volunteers to support it, you know, to do more production or prepping of foods in-house. For example, instead of buying pre-made frozen sandwiches, which is, you know, maybe bread, turkey, cheese, and that's it. And then using those because I mean, that's convenient. It helps us. It meets the needs. But if we can produce a fresher, more appetizing sandwich, even potentially for less money, in our own kitchen, and you know, that's going to help us, you know, in a variety of ways, but most importantly, I go out on site visits and I've seen that. I've seen kids literally, taking the meat and the cheese off of the bread because maybe the bread's not ideal quality at that point, and that's hard with all these logistical challenges. But the more resources we can dedicate to it, the better we can do.
Thanks so much, Eric. Alissa, we have a question that I think is great for you. Where do you see the nutrition program at the food bank going in the future?
Well, that's a great question. I guess it depends on the time in the future. I hope that we will be able to continue to expand our nutrition education. As Eric said, we're looking to get the news out to more and more partners. It's completely free to receive nutrition education through us. So the more we can get out there, the better. I do think that we're going to have a lot of really great opportunities at our new location because we'll have such a robust on-site food pantry, at the Waterloo location after it's been renovated. We're also going to have a kitchen that's right next to the pantry. So we'll be able to do quite a lot of on-site nutrition education right before people go into the pantry and are able to select food. So that will be really cool because we'll be able to demo things and show them things and feature things that we have in-house as they go through. We're also going to make sure that the setup is ideal for recording for everyone to do that, so we can get some nutrition education videos up on our website and on our portal. So that's very exciting opportunity. And then, generally food as medicine wise, I think there's a lot of potential to continue to work with our agency partners. We have, almost a couple hundred pantries that we support. So the more that we can work with them to do things like implement client choice models, implement SWAP in their pantries, get nutrition education on site there, and help them make choices that are increasingly nutritionally sound. So for example, we're really going to try to work hard over the next year or so to get the SWAP ratings onto our shopping list so that people know when they're ordering what those rankings are. Because I think, in addition to someone walking through the pantry and being nudged, we can help provide people valuable information as they're ordering from us. So those are a few things that come to mind. There's a world of potential for sure.
Thank you so much. This looks like it'll be our last question, and then we'll wrap up. And this is great for you, Eric. Can you talk a little bit about any vegetarian options that the food bank does? And the one example that I go to is with the preschool partner that we have. I'll just add that to it. But can you talk a little bit about that real quickly?
Yeah. I mean, most of our menus are a mix of different protein choices. And I guess I would call myself a flexitarian. So I'm mindful of the protein mix, and not only for nutrition reasons, not getting too much red meat, for instance, but also the benefits of variety. And I think more specifically, you're talking about the Merrick House menus, where we started doing, I think it was just this year, we started doing menus for 1 to 5 year olds, which was new for us, smaller portions. And then we had to think more carefully, about what are the kind of needs of children at those ages, as they're very big developmental stages in eating. So what works good for them that might not make sense on, the menus that are feeding, high schoolers. But, and they also wanted at that site, they had at least one kid that wanted vegetarian only. So we made sure that every day, whether it was either the menu option of the day, if not, if there was a meat option, we had to menu a vegetarian alternate for that day.
Thanks so much. And it looks like we are right at time. Alissa, I think you did a perfect segue too, just talking about the new kitchen and the new building over at Coit Road. I will put a shameless plug. If anyone wants to come visit us and volunteer in the fall, we would love to show off our new Coit Road building that we have going up. Also, if you want to compare and contrast, there's still time to come volunteer here at South Waterloo. And Kate will be sending out wrap-up notes for everybody, but she'll also include some tour opportunity times as well if anyone's just interested in coming for a quick tour. We do have several dates and times that we're offering later this month as well as in the month of July, but we would love to see you, love to have you come in, show you the kitchen and some other ways that Waterloo is going to be transforming. And again, would really love to see you over at Coit Road. But most importantly, Alissa and Eric, I just want to thank you so much for everything that you and your team do and just how critically important it is. I think a lot of times folks don't realize that we have, the two of you and your team on staff here and just how thoughtful and passionate you are with everything that you do in this particular work. So just want to thank you, and for everyone that's either over in the community room or is on the line joining us with Zoom, thank you so much for all of your support, whether it's volunteering and helping pack those lunches for those preschoolers or through other support that you may give. These are the type of examples that your support is making a difference. And again, we truly could not do it with you. So for everybody on the line, thank you, thank you, thank you. We'll be taking a break for Food for Thought Plus over the summer months. But next time we join, it will be in September, and we'll actually be over at the Coit Road building. So everyone enjoy summer break, and look forward to seeing you all in a few months. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you make